Hello everyone, welcome to Soul Talks. I am Chiran Doshi, your host for today. We are diving into a very powerful topic which is about understanding relationships. Before we understand relationships, we need to understand about love. We need to understand about intimacy or emotional patterns. So on the podcast today, we have a very esteemed guest, Nirjara Aura, who's here to explain us about all the different topics the different generations have gone through. Welcome to the podcast, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Chiran, for inviting me for this wonderful topic. And yes, relationship is one of the main reasons we humans come on earth to only experience relationships, and that is why having relationship is really, though it is very vital for the soul evolution, but it is like very complicated also, so that is why many people have issues that are related to the relationships. So this is going to be an extremely lovely podcast that we'll be talking about, diving into different aspects of relationships.
So, ma'am, I want to understand, I guess a lot of relationships currently are failing as far as what we are seeing on Instagram or on Facebook or on so many other portals, where daily there's some other issue, somebody's going through a breakup or somebody's basically going through a divorce, which has become a very common issue right now. So what do you think? The current generation is the only one facing it, or previous generations also had their set of problems?
Well, all generations have their set of problems. It's not like that this generation is the only one who's facing this. All the generations had multiple issues. Each generation had their set of problems, which they really strive to work on it, and they gave a new template. But with the new template came the new issues. So then that generation was working on it. So it's not like, every person actually goes through some or the other relationship issues, because somehow the whole human existence on earth is to come, have experiences with the relationships, and then grow from that. So irrespective of this generation, all the other generations also had the same problems. Maybe they were different problems, but they still had the same problems.
I just want to understand then, how is it that the generational trauma is helping the current modern relationships? What is the link between the two of them?
The generational trauma basically is, transferred from one generation to another generation. Okay. So when we are talking about trauma, we have to understand that a specific generation where the trauma had actually happened, that particular or that person, in that lineage could not actually process it. Or maybe he spent a way too longer time to actually deal with this, and it was kind of an unfinished business. So if you don't get, it's like a karma rollover or an account rollover, it is also a generation or a trauma rollover. So that is what is basically, it will be transferring from one generation to another, and with each generation getting that trauma code, everything that we have is actually coded into our DNA. So when you are born with that trauma code, definitely that trauma is going to affect you, and each generation, wherever the trauma code is appearing, it will kind of then reflect in their life, and then that generation will try to solve that issue.
So I think, ma'am, before understanding about the current generation, we need to understand what the traumas were faced by the older generation. Probably can we start with like a small introduction as to which were the previous generations and the issues faced by them?
So basically, what we are living in Kali Yuga, and Kali Yuga is the place when, the life eternally keeps deteriorating, So we had Satyug, we had Treta, and now we are in Kali Yuga, So when we are in Kali Yuga, things are deteriorating, which means that relationships also should deteriorate. The DNA of the humans are deteriorating. But I would say the phase between 1920 say like a 2075, okay, this gap of around 150-160 years that what we have, this is kind of a transformational phase. If I'm looking at Earth's standpoint of view, from the spiritual growth of Earth, so all those people who are living on Earth, all of them are actually going through this spiritual evolution.
So, ma'am, for the betterment of the audience, could you please explain what is the silent generation?
The silent generations are basically our grandfathers and great grandfathers, and they were the people who basically were more or less anchored a lot of root chakra energy, and root chakra energy is basically about grounding yourself, bringing stability, building up a institution or a structure. So that is what the silent generation was all about actually.
So, ma'am, were there any hidden spiritual warriors during that phase, probably unseen within the silent generation?
All of them were spiritual warriors. Any person, born after 1920 till current date, all of us are contributing some or the other signature in our soul code relating to whichever time we are born. So if you look at it, root chakra is all about building stability and working on the ground level, connecting with earth. If you see, you have a lot of farmers, a lot of weavers, a lot of people, potters, all those people, they were working, and all of them in their way were doing the work what the universal energy was making them do. So that's why you see all of them doing the same kind of work.
So I guess this was the generation that was before the Industrial Revolution.
Yes, absolutely. They were the one who actually brought Industrial Revolution, because everything, once you need a base, you need a structure. If you're building a building, you need to go deep into earth, build that kind of a structure so that whatever grows on it has a stability. So they were the one who did a lot of groundwork. So they, of course, they were the one before the Industrial Revolutions.
So, ma'am, what would have been the collective shadows, spiritually speaking?
Just for the audience to know, every person has two aspects of it, one that they show outside and one that they hide. So every generation had people who were kind of light bearers or light torchers, and then for the same amount of people, they had people who had actually taking the pain and the trauma, and they were doing the shadow work. So if you look at around that time, maybe 2% populations were the one who actually made it large, but rest of the people, they were having fears, they were insecure, they were unstable. There was lot of control, so they were not in their own control, they were controlled by somebody else. And because they had to break that entire cycle of getting out of the control, it's around that time, the root energy started coming. The earth was receiving a lot of grounding energies of earth. So these were basically the shadows that these people were living it. Poverty, no homes, instability. If you look at around that time, this is what they were experiencing.
So, ma'am, just for better understanding for me and the audience, could you just suggest, or could you just elaborate on what exactly is a shadow?
Shadow is basically a aspect of us. We as humans, we have a self, and then we have a shadow self. External self is something that we show out in public. So you may be angry, but you are not showing it out, you are just kind of hiding it behind. But in front, you are not showing it. You have different emotions, but you don't, you mask yourself. So all these energies, all those feelings, all those emotions that are masked, that go into the shadow aspect, and that shadow is the one actually that holds a lot of power. But somebody has to hold that shadow and has to work in the shadow so that you can come out of it. So that is basically the shadow. So if you so many people, I think in that time, if I'm talking about silent generations, they were really struck with poverties, and they didn't have house, or they were at any given point of time, properties or things, or at that time the properties and assets were animals, the cattle, so that could be taken away from them. So they were constantly living in insecurity. And when that energy was too intense, in Kali Yuga, you go down, but somehow this phase, they are giving us a chance. I think somewhere up there somebody loves us so much that they're giving us a chance, but that just can't happen like that. A miracle cannot just happen like that. It's a very slow process, and that's how it happened. So they started anchoring a lot of root energies, which gave people strength to work on their shadows.
So I guess what you're saying, just to dumb it down, or probably I may be wrong, please correct me, isn't it like yin and yang? So
Yeah.
So the light and the dark.
Absolutely.
So you're basically always fighting amongst yourself.
Internally, yes.
Internally, yes.
Yes.
So I mean, when you go through so much of issues, say mentally or physically, you have a lot of pain in your body, or mentally, or any which ways. So how do you think the generation basically healed their pain, or how can they heal their pain?
So that is how that particular generation started working with Mother Earth. You know, if you look at them, they were doing a very job which were menial, but they were more connected to nature. If you look at today's generation or any generation above us, they are a little disconnected. Okay, but those people were very connected with the nature. So that is how they kind of healed themselves. You know, they grounded themselves. You go for walks. At that point of time, there were not too many transportations, so people walked. And when you're walking, you are grounding yourself completely over the time. You know, so automatically, you know, it was balanced.
So, ma'am, just for our understanding, could you please give us an an example? Who would be probably the anchor, and who would be the shadow of the generation?
So every generation has a powerful hero, and then definitely there is a villain aspect of it. And when I say hero, is not that they are, you know, but they're the savior kinds. And villain, I don't mean to say anything disgraceful about that, but they were the ones who could, you know, they could not live to the potential. So for example, we have JRD Tata, you know, and he worked so diligently to help other people evolve, you know, and that also requires some level of power, okay, some level of control, where he used it so beautifully. You have Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, you know, who was doing that. At the same time, you had Hitler, you had Mussolini, who really could not digest the power of control, and they lost it. So they went into the shadow side, into the negative aspect of themselves, and then they became who they became, you know. And of course both of them are part of the history, but one is respected for what they did because they contributed to the growth, you know. So we have those beautiful angels and they are of course all, you know, angels who were walking with us because they showed us the way. Again, these kind of people, they also showed us a way of what we should not be, you know. So it's just like that, you know. Every generation will have their own aspects of that.
So, ma'am, that was a very good explanation over the silent generation. I think the audience, if you guys want to add something, there's always a comment box below. Please do write over there. Now coming to the newer generation, I guess the generation after silent generation. Could you please explain what generation is that?
So the next generation that came is basically, the boomer generation. It is called as baby boomer, but then they were called as boomers. This is roughly around 1946 se leke 1964 tak, you know. Again, plus 2, 3, 4 years or there, it really doesn't matter, you know. But these were the people who actually came because, you know, they have now, because they have a parents, they have a generation who has worked through a trauma of, you know, being in physical aspect, you know. So they have, these people, they worked, they walked, they builded everything themselves. So they were self-creators. Now this generation doesn't need to do that work because an elder generation has done that for them. So these people now came with the energies of the sacral chakra, and that was basically related to the emotional aspect of it, you know. And again, if you're looking at the sacral chakra, it is also called as the sexual chakra, and during that time there were so many babies that were born, you know. Again, there was a lot of liberation happening, that many countries became independent at that point of time. So there was a lot of freedom, you know, and with freedom comes creativity. So and of course humans, you know, having an offspring is the biggest aspect of creation. So that is why it is called boomer generation.
So ma'am, I think you spoke about the sacral chakra, the sacral chakra. So, could you please tell me, how did the sacral chakra help the generation?
Energies that are anchored in earth with the coming generations, they are always trying to raise the human vibrations. The sacral chakra is essentially about water element, which is about fluidity, which is about creativity. So if you look at the whole aspect, you will see a lot of global, creators, you know, which are in the creative field, you know. So you will have painters, you have singers, you have creators. All of them had come at that point of time because through their own expression, through their own emotions, they were now looking at the world and they were teaching the world that we have to live through emotions. One was about stability, okay. With you being unstable, you worked into the stability. Now what happens once you are stable? What are you going to do? You can't remain stable, you're going to improve on it. So how do you improve? We start with the creativity. So that's when the, you know, sacral energy started coming in, you know. And this is the time when we had a lot of emotionals which were surfaced outside, you know.
So I think I want to ask one more question, ma'am. So, how do you think that their creativity shaped humanity's vibration?
Through their expressions for whatever work they were doing. For example, we have the legendary Mr. Amitabh Bachchan, or we have, stalwart like Lata Mangeshkar. They gave us one of the best talent you can have, and if you look at it, Mr. Bachchan right now also there, and when he's basically in that generation, but there are fans who are in this generation also, who is just kind of looking out, waiting for his gate, so they carry that signature, they carry that aura, they carry that energy which inspires a lot of people. I'm sure that around 70s and around that time, 60s and 70s, there was a whole generation that had haircuts similar to that. There were so many aspiring people. You have wonderful companies that came up, so they carry the inspiring energies through the creativity. Like you have Mr. Steve Jobs. He has been an inspiration to so many people, the whole world. I mean, all of you generation right now, all of you are fan of you. For you, he's a god. Steve Jobs is a god for you. It was his creativity, and that creativity is still hooked onto you, So that is what happens when you express yourself through your talent, through your creation, through your, emotions. That's when these miracles happen,
Very powerful, ma'am.
Yeah.
So, what do you think are the emotional lessons that this generation is trying to teach us, like what they would have felt?
This generation was actually helping to evolve through emotions, through understanding, not just focus onto the material desires, but express themselves beyond that, So definitely materialism also came into the picture because the earlier generation had it. This generation also had it, a little more version of it. But this is what they were trying to show, that it is just not about pure materialism. There's an altruistic motion behind it, and through creativity you can work out that, So that is what this generation actually helped a lot of energies to encode, inspire, and help elevate people.
So, ma'am, how do we work with the sacral wound that they had carried?
So, what we can do is, we can work on the forgiveness aspect. Creativity is all about being in flow. Okay, so understand your own power, understand who you are. Do not fall trap into the materialism. Of course we do need money, but it's not that just money is going to help us. We need to have talent for us. You need to go inside, you need to understand who you are, bring out your talent, bring out your potential, and then live through it. And it is applicable to even today's generation and all of us, because somewhere or the other we are carrying those emotional trauma and wound within us. So if we are able to work on this, automatically that generation's trauma will be released with us. So that is what I would recommend. Again, drinking water is really, really very nice. Being in your sensual awareness, opening up your divine goddess powers, that is really interesting aspect for this.
Thank you for explaining the baby boomers. Now let's come after the baby boomers. Which generation is after the baby boomers?
It's basically called the Generation X actually, and that is my generation. Okay, I'm a Generation X.
Lovely.
Yeah, so these generations, they are coming between the age of 1965 to 1980. So this is who we are, and if I have to just express through myself, we are born rebels.
Okay.
This whole generation had a lot of rebellion energies against that.
So, ma'am, when you say rebels, could you please tell me rebel as in how? Like in what context?
See, if you look at the previous two generations, they had established a lot, okay? But now, what is new and nice for you cannot be nice for me. I need to find my own path. So, whatever conformism that you had given, whatever the way of life that you were living, it was an emotional aspect with which we left the second generation. So the third generation carried it furthermore, but instead of now expressing through emotions, they was using emotions to go back inside, and they were trying to figure out what is in it for me, who am I, so they were going towards their own inner power. So that is why they were called the rebels.
So ma'am, I guess what you are saying is they were not the traditionist, as you can say.
Yeah, they were fighting against the traditionist.
So if you're fighting against the tradition, so what was the reason for fighting against the tradition?
See, it was basically to bring about your own uniqueness and your own ability. Okay, so we had people who were working on the survival skills. Okay, then from survival skills and from being insecure to security, then they came into the creative aspect where they build everything. Now, what do you do after that? That wealth that you built, the creativity, whatever do you do, what do you need that for? You need that for yourself. So that is why they were the ones who started with the first people. And this is a generation where actually, if you go as per the new age traditions, this is the indigo generation. So this indigo generation is the time when, the energies on the earth started literally growing really very high. And the vibrations rose high because of the advent of indigo children, so we are indigo adults right now. But this indigo, when we were as children, we had a lot of those energies which was meant to bring about spirituality. So when the spirituality, and what is spirituality, is about your soul. So now the focus from outward is going inwards. So that is why they had to rebel.
So, ma'am, I want to understand what exactly are these indigo children or indigo adults? Because this is a concept I'm hearing for the very first time.
Yeah, so basically, the earth is bombarded with multiple energies, So what we are working right now is on the solar plexus, Basically, this is the energy that this generation X anchored. There is a new age therapy which says that they have come with definite spiritual codes in them. Not only that they are now expressing through the powers and power dynamics of the roots, they are also carrying additional powers, because then that will help earth to elevate faster. Essentially it's all about growth. It is all about ascension, and each generation is trying to do that. But with this generation X, the growth in spirituality has started increasing. So probably you will see, you have a lot of Oshos, at that point of time, who brought about this concept also. I mean, he had put the seed in the previous generation, but this is when the fan following was the highest, So it's all about coming back to yourself.
So, ma'am, like we spoke, like you told me about the silent generation was equated with the root chakra. So, this generation X, will be equated with which chakra?
Solar plexus.
Solar plexus. Okay. Could you please tell me what is solar plexus?
So solar plexus is basically the third chakra, which is right in the navel.
Okay.
It's also called as navel chakra or a power chakra. This is where your power is. This is where your potential is. And everybody has to go back to who we are, find out our power, reclaim our power, and then give it back and help the society to it, So at this point of time, you will see a lot of people were started companies which were soul based, So if you see Infosys and all of that, they were not only looking for growth in terms of expansion, but elevation also. They changed the dynamics of the world. So you have many companies like that,
So I guess, ma'am, when you spoke about Infosys and all, for example, as in how, when you're talking about growth, so how, and growth in what sense? I mean, because Infosys, if we look at it, is traditionally an IT company, started as an IT company, broke the barriers, like you said, they were rebels. So in what context are we referring to Infosys?
Infosys gave jobs to so many people. They not only secured them, each chakra, when it comes, it actually goes back to the root, takes the power, gives the power, So as you activate your third chakra, so if you're, let's say, taking example of Infosys, they not only give a job which was a security, not only help them with the creativity, but they give power. I think Infosys is very important because many Indians then started going to US because they were being called because of the job that they had here, because of what they could express themselves in power. They could ask for better salaries, better jobs, and better concepts in the world, So this is how any company, it will help you grow. Now even if you look at Mr. Shah Rukh Khan, Mr. Shah Rukh Khan is the one who was a rebel. I mean, there was people who were doing so many things and they were successful, super successful, But when Mr. Shah Rukh Khan came, he really changed, He says it doesn't matter. It is all about me being seen, me being known as who I am for my potential. So of course he used a lot of affirmations and powers and all the aspects to say, because every day in the morning he says, I'm King Khan, So of course he believes in a lot of these things, but he became the brand. he became the icon of power, and he actually exudes, still today he exudes that power. So if you look at the people born around in and around that place, Mr. Manek Shah is also there. These are the people who actually really give out the power. So with the power, they actually not only help themselves, but they help others also.
So, like, ma'am, you gave an example of Mr. Shah Rukh Khan. I mean, he came from a generation where it was purely about masculinity, and it was also about bodybuilding and aggressive action heroes. And here comes a young, sweet boy who's not scared to show his emotions, who's not scared to cry in front of the camera. So, doesn't that basically say that your generation did have an emotional intelligence?
It did. It really did, because with that emotional intelligence, like I said, Mr. Shah Rukh Khan, we have all the talents and potentials. If you are using your talent and potential towards your passion and broadcasting it across, for the larger good, it will be noticed. And that's what he did. He broke the barriers where there were so many people who were literally doing action roles, and he here is a sweet boy, like what you completely expressed, and he was not afraid to love. So the shift that he did was, he shifted the energies from the audience which were masculine to the women. Again, like I said, in the previous generations, it was all about bringing your divine energies, about the femininity and sensuality. He took it forward by actually giving them what they wanted. So now his target audience from men became females who were never even considered. When people go for films, I mean, for this examples, audience was basically males. Now he has given a reason for us to go to theater to see him again. Like, I remember I have seen Kuch Kuch Hota Hai at least 22 times in theater. At least 22 times, like literally. So, I mean, that was a thing, because there was this hero who was not afraid to show how he felt. He was shown as a loser. So that is accepting his shadow part. I have failed. I have failed in London. People fail in India. I have failed in London. This is what they were showing in that film, So that shows so much of power of creativity, about understanding who you are and looking at what the audience is wanting. That is also power. And he tapped into that power. That is what he did brilliantly, and he broke all the records. So he was a true rebel. He was not even afraid to say, yes, I will go and dance wherever you is needed, because it's all about him, being him as power. I mean, I remember, it's a very personal incident, but in one of the hotels I had seen him, and he was just waving to somebody else, but it felt like he was waving it to me, because I saw him waving in real, and that creates a lot of impact, And of course, we have so many wonderful stories. I'm a big fan of Shah Rukh Khan, so thank God you brought him up. I'm really big fan. Yeah.
So, again, different line of questioning again. So, like we spoke about the yin and yangs of the previous generation, what is the yin and yang of your generation?
When you take rebellism on another level, you don't. Of course, everything has a limit, but when you take it, then you are in a. So I would not like to name anybody, but we have very bad media agencies around us, and they take it to a whole different level where they're trying to make news out of everything, This is their way of rebelling everything, So this is how that generation kind of, fell into the trap of, not working in that potential, but literally abusing their power. So many politicians, all across the globe, many media mogul agencies, and all of them, they misuse their power. And anybody in any given space of time misuse the power, it's not right. They'll never yield good results, So it's a cycle. It may come back to them immediately or later, but it will come back.
So when we talk about the shadow aspect, now you say that, okay, for example, any media agency abusing their powers. Now, how does that affect humanity? How does that affect humanity's relationship? And what lesson would that basically teach us, as in for the younger generation, to not go through?
When anybody is abusing their power, it is automatically creating a situation where somebody is a victim. And when there is a victim, there is an abuse. When there is an abuse, automatically that person goes through different aspects, It could be mental, it could be social, it could be psychological, And that stays with us, so then that code is then generated in your DNA. You may have the power to fight it, you may not have the power to fight it, but if you have the power to fight it, there's a whole another level of stress about survival, about winning, about staying in your power. Or you just give it up, then it's definitely your shadow part that you are not courageous, so then the next generation then has to build up the courage so that they can face it, so that's how any generation that abuses it, the other generation has to pay and has to stand up for not only their shadows but also the previous generation's shadows also.
But then, ma'am, you say about the next generation. Now, my question is, how does that sort of affect the same generation? See, when we talk about the traumas, now the trauma is stagnant between all the generations. I mean, all generations will basically have a similar sort of trauma.
Yeah.
So, like, if Gen X is going through something, so everybody in Gen X would be going through something.
There would be some similarities of traumas that they might be facing, but now it all depends on which family, which way you are born, So, if you have in a family, if you have somebody who is doing a lot of charity work, for example, they flip their trauma, The universe rewards them by flipping their trauma. But if there is a family who has not done any work, but they have just built, like for example, if you look at the traditionalist, the silent generation, they suffered a lot, and they, with lot of struggle, they built something, then with lot of problems, so they brought out their creativity, and then the coming generation pays for each and every generation. So yes, on a superficial level, if you are looking at it, or just generic level you're looking at it, so that is why the soul come around at that time. Each and every soul comes around at that time because they are going to face these issues.
So, ma'am, I was actually reading a news article where right now divorce at 50 has become the most common topic. And if we see, basically, if we look at Generation X is nearly the age where they have turned 50, or in and around the 50 bracket, you can call it.
Again, the rebel energy.
Yeah.
Again, the rebel energy. They don't want to just follow the systems. They want to have their independence. They want to have their identity. They are looking for their power. Maybe at that point of time, they were not allowed. But now you see what happens is, my generation, they may or may not have the courage, but the coming generation had the courage. They did their work, and they opened up more portals, more doors, So when you look at the other person thriving, your younger generation thriving and making it large. For example, in my generation, at that point of time, it was not that divorce was uncommon, but people would not go for divorces, But now when you see that there are other women younger than you, they are making it large, they are having the financial independence and then living the life, and then you have another generation and another generation really making it way, and it's like really super. This generation is now having the courage that, okay, maybe I can also do so. So each generation is interdependent on each other.
So, but then, ma'am, when you say about rebels, normally shouldn't rebels be the ones who start the...
They started a lot of things, but there are so many latent desires, latent things which are there. So this is what we are talking about on a spiritual level. This is on a personal level.
Okay.
So when our topic right now was on spiritual level, they have done a lot for the society, for the everybody on earth, because earth is ascending. And while the earth is ascending, also we as humans are ascending. So when we are talking on that personal level, now we have the courage to do certain things which we didn't have back then.
So I got confused between personal and spiritual.
That is okay.
It's basically, can we say it's interdependent to each other?
Interconnected to each other.
Okay.
But it may not happen in the same time.
Yeah.
Like you said, divorces in 50 is very common now. Why? Because now they have the courage to do it. Where do they have the courage to do it? Because they're seeing somebody else doing it and then living it. Back in our time, it was a little difficult situation because they didn't have support. Now we are not even worried about the support.
I think your generation basically made it easy for us to have, now for example, now how common has love marriage become?
Yes.
I guess your parents' generation was always an arranged marriage in India.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Your generation started that trend. They rebelled against that. I'm not going to say anything controversial to anyone. I don't want to offend anyone. But see, your generation did rebel against the concept of an arranged marriage, where you felt, okay, no, I am more capable of finding my own partner. I am more capable of finding somebody who can love me and who I can love, rather than being just randomly
married to a stranger.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, so that is a shift in the paradigm. You know, they rebelled against that tradition also, because they had their power. They knew that they have the power to go and find the right partner, and for that, then whatever it takes, they did it. You know, so they of course had the courage and the energy and the rebellion energy to do it, and then it became a norm. So after that, it was easier for other generation to just follow it, you know, because when a generation starts, also there is like 2 decades. So one is the way shower, and one is the one who is actually reaping the benefits and passing it to another. So always the initial aspect, the first 5 years or the first 7 years are the one who take the maximum brunt. So they take from that, but they are following, you know, they take the courage and the benefits from the upper generation, but then they carve away for the younger generation. So that's how.
So, like all previous generations had their trauma, what trauma do you think your generation has?
I think the very mere fact is that we had to rebel for each and everything. Rebel energy is basically constantly, you know, being out and, you know, fighting and, you know, doing that. So that's a stress, you know, and you don't know whether you're going to win or not, though you are standing in your power. But that is also a toll, na? It is stress, it takes on to you, you know. So of course you have that shadow aspect to that also.
So I want to say one thing. Now we talk about silent generation, the amount of traumas and problems they faced. The same thing now is coming to Gen X. So again, like you said, it's a cycle. But don't you think that the same soul who was in silent generation, probably if they had passed away and then reincarnated into the
Oh my
rebellious
God,
stage?
that is such a torture to that soul. It is such a torture because he had to work, that particular soul had to work not only on the physical level and break the cycle. He is born again in a new cycle and he has to break it, you know. So I think it is an immense respect to the soul who probably came in the silent generation and again in the Gen X, you know, like it's like a...
I mean, you can call them, we can call them stalwarts, because every time they are breaking the patterns for us.
They are stalwarts, but they are warriors, because why would the soul choose to have another cycle? They can choose to, you know, reap the benefit of it. So they are absolutely the ones who are born with those power codes, you know, where they are going to, you know, carve the way. We are way showers. They are called as way showers, you know. And the life of way showers is really very, very, you know, like I said, it is for one generation to be rebellious so much. They face on a physical level, then they are going to face it on an emotional level. I mean, it's really a task, you know.
So, I guess based on your answer, I actually have 2 more questions on the same very topic.
Sure.
First, you said was power codes.
Yes.
So, I want to understand what exactly are power codes, and the second was basically related to the emotional traumas. I mean, how do you handle the emotional traumas? How does your generation handle the emotional trauma?
Okay, let me answer what is power codes. But as far as traumas are concerned, you know, each generation handles the trauma the way they are taught. And unfortunately, nobody is taught. So they are not capable of handling the trauma. And upon the moment, I think the current generation, exactly the current generation, which is generational alpha, they have a very, very sorted aspect, you know, because they believe in their self. They
Correct.
believe in loving their self and working for themselves, because it literally took 6 generations for the generational alpha to bring on that much of work for them to heal. Unfortunately, it was not. It is through the rebels, you know, through these Generation X, where we started looking inwards towards our soul, you know, when we started focusing. But that was all about it. All the maximum what we could do is we could shift the ball inside, you know, and just work on that, you know. But it was the next generation who did a lot of that work, you know. So essentially, if you ask me how to handle the trauma, I don't think anybody was taught. So we just put it in our shadow. We put it on the backside and move on with the life.
Fair enough. So, ma'am, like we spoke about the Gen X, which is your generation, Now, which generation comes after Gen X?
Naturally, Gen X के बाद आता है Gen Y, but it is also called as Millennials, you know. It's not called Gen Y because it is very close to the Millennium, so that is why they were called Millennials, you know. So Millennials were more sparky and they were more emotional than us, you know. The things that we could not process, or the things that, you know, the Gen X could not do, it was easy for them because of course they carved the way for them, you know.
Like you said, you can actually basically, if I'm wrong, you can correct me, but Gen X were parents to millennials, correct?
Yes.
So whatever traumas Gen X faced, they ensure that trauma does not go to millennials.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were the first people who decided to break the patterns. And not to a very great level, but yes, they tried a lot. And again, like I said, they are rebellious. So if people were accepting traumas, if people were accepting all those energies which were lower vibrationals, these were the people who said, "Bus, not anymore." So they were the ones who became, you know, more empowered, more soul powered, I would say, you know. And because they were ruling from emotions and they had the power and they had the brain, they decided, "A bus, not now," you know. So they contained a lot of it, and they changed their pattern, they changed their behavior, giving millennials really a wonderful time to express themselves completely, you know, to be themselves, you know, to quite an extent.
So, ma'am, like you said, the Gen X was the solar plexus in terms of the chakra.
Yeah.
So now, when it comes to the millennials, which chakra is associated with the millennials?
Then the next chakra is the heart chakra. So
Okay.
if you look at how the chakra system goes, there is always a root chakra, then there is a sacral chakra. Root is with the earth, sacral is with the water, then you have solar plexus, which is your fire energy. Then comes heart, where it is all about love,
Emotions.
you know, just being there. It's about forgiveness, you know. And now, because this Gen X did a lot of processing, you know, in whichever way, and they did not pass it to them, the millennials had a chance to express themselves the way they were. And not everybody, I would say, but yes, a major chunk of that generation had the liberty and had the power to choose to do what they want, to be the person that they wanted to be, you know, like I mean. And that is why if you see, a lot of things were now out in public. Everything which was behind the closet, which was masked, you know, which was in the shadow, now everything started coming out when you look at this generation, millennial generation, as you call it, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you say certain things now, for example, I guess your generation frowned upon gambling a lot, like were not very open with gambling, you can say. Now when I sort of go to Goa, I have a habit that, okay, whenever I'm in Goa, I will go to a casino and come out. Your generation did go, but
it did happen in all the generations because, you know,
but there was
acceptance level.
Correct, yes.
What you are talking about is acceptance level. Yes, acceptance was there, and it then started coming out more openly, you know, compared to previous generations. Previous generations would probably shy off, but like we rebels, we did a lot of work for you guys, so it was very easy for you to just walk on the cake, you know, it was kind of that.
I guess I think every audience's family would sort of agree that the grandparents always had a hard time with their kids, but when the grandkids came, they had all the luxuries available in the world.
Our generation, unfortunately, if I have to say, is we had to take a lot of shift from both the generations. Because we had to accept, because they were in that energy of power, dynamics and control, so we had to take a lot of their traditions and absorb that and rebel through that. And now you guys are having a different set of rules, so we have to rebel through that also. So accepting both of them is kind of a big torture for us, you know, for Generation X, you know, like I mean.
Like you said, you are rebels, you have to rebel. You don't have an alternative.
We don't have a choice, you know, and we came to anchor that energy so that, you know, these people can throw their power on us and we can give you the support that you want. Correct. You know, it's just like that. Yeah.
So now when we talk about the heart chakra, so how does the heart chakra rule over the millennials?
Dil se. Heart chakra is all about heart. It's about emotions. It's about feelings. It's about love, you know. And I think one of the beautiful films that Mr. Shah Rukh Khan came out was during this time, you know, everything was just out there and open, you know. So it's all about emotions, living through emotions. A lot of emotion-based companies started coming up, you know. People started respecting their self. People understood their self. People took themselves as priority. I don't think the millennials would allow anybody to push them over. They know, you know, they can create boundaries. They know what are their limits and they can create boundaries, you know. They may share or they may not share, but they know that this is the boundary. And even anybody else, including their parents, are not allowed, including their friends are not allowed, including their girlfriends are not allowed. So this generation has, yes, created a boundary. And that boundary is protecting them and allowing them to heal, to nurture, to, you know, literally progress, you know, growth. So this generation is also about growth. Millennials is all about growth with different aspects, you know, because now you're at the center of the crux. Okay, if I have to look at it, these are called the rainbow childrens. Now rainbow has a spectrum of all the 7 colors. So right now they are in middle. So, you know, they have the base of every generation above them, which is like a concrete base, and it's allowed them to just grow everywhere, you know, to be whichever version they want to. And if I have to again say about rainbows, a lot of people came out of the closets during this phase.
Yeah, again, there was a huge LGBTQ
community,
movement.
yes, and it is represented by rainbows again, you know. So like if you see, everything is just synchronized, you know.
So when you speak about openness, when you speak about acceptance, when you speak about them carving their own way, now I don't want to offend anyone, but I guess your generation, it was relatively very frowned upon when you spoke that, okay, I'm going to a therapist to talk about my problems, or I need somebody to have a discussion about my problems.
Yes.
But when you look at millennials, look at the millennial generation, they promote it saying that it is healthy, they are open, they are accepting, they discuss about the problems, they want to go to the root cause. So when your generation came in emotional intelligence, their generation went a deeper level into the emotional intelligence.
Heart intelligence,
soul-based
intelligence, you know. So they allowed their heart to rule the world, you know. And that is why a lot of community work, if you see, a lot of communities started coming up, you know. Gated communities started coming up, which was not there previously in just living residences. A lot of gated communities came up. Apart from that, there are so many people who are, you know, helping other peoples to grow in business, because now they are like, you know, I'm done, you know, and I need what I need, but I can help other people, you know. So this feeling of kindness, this feeling of emotion is just overflowing now. And heart is all about overflowing. Okay.
Like you said about helping others, I guess this was the phase where maximum consultancy firms came into the picture.
Yeah, because
basically the word consultant only was, you can say, somewhat coined during this generation after 1995.
It was in early 90s, you know. So again, I said, you know, this timeline can be a little bit here or there, and each soul will bloom at a different time, you know. So it may be to this generation, but blooming may happen about its own course at a different time. So yes, the consultancy is about always helping, but also staying in your power. You are not going to be any corporate slave. You are going to stay in your power. You are going to be working flexibly. So that 9 to 5 slave mindset was off, you know. They had the power to do what they wanted. They had the courage also to do what they want to.
So ma'am, correct me if I'm wrong. Now with the way you are telling, the way we are talking about it, can we take it into a perspective that whenever a generation changes, whenever a new chakra arises, every person in that generation, for example, be it Gen X, be it the silent generation, or any other generation, whichever chakra is ruling at that particular moment, everybody sort of changes as per that chakra?
Brilliant question and a brilliant observation. Yes, it does. Because with every new energy, like you said, the divorces in the 50s, we are now ruling from our heart. Previously, it was not possible, but now we are using our heart, and rather we are accepting the truth. Because right now it is the time of generation alpha. Gen A is what Gen A is all about, you know, speaking your truth. You know, and then they are expressing like this, and you know, like I mean, you know, and they come up with different words, so they are creators, but they are talking the truth, whatever is in their mind. They are not conformists,
Yeah, yeah.
Millennials will have to learn to talk
Go
about
into
their truths.
confrontations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Millennials will have to do that, but with this generation it comes very easily, so yes, with every chakra that is anchored, automatically the energy field is becoming more stronger and more vibrant, and that is constantly being absorbed by us, so we have universal energy, we have source, and the source keeps on anchoring those energies, and that is happening through indigos, through rainbow childs and crystal childs, so the next generation is a crystal child. Millennials are the rainbow kids, so you brought out that possibilities, you brought out the spectrum. Okay, so you paved the ways for the coming generation to then choose whatever you want. But you started, it's like a bouquet. You offered a bouquet against which we were all just struggling to build up a stem. You are giving bouquets out, So that is what every chakra, and it impacts on everybody. So if I'm not sure, but there might be 2 or 3 people who would be in the silent generations awake. But yes, if you see them, they would be different. I don't know, but I have an example to give you. If you see various things, TikToks and reels and all those things, there's so many old people, they were between the silent generation and then they were, the boomer generation. Those people who never had the courage to go, these aunties and those grandmummies are now dancing and they are showing their talents. Where do you think they have the power to do that? Because it's a presence of a rainbow child or a indigo child, around them, that they are having this thing. So it's an excellent question and a lovely observation, that with each generation anchoring, we change. The whole universe changes, so this shifts constantly keep happening.
So, ma'am, when we talk about certain aspects, we are discussing about certain things now. We've spoken about the previous generation traumas. We've spoken about the previous generation's shadows. Coming to the same line of questions again, what do you think are the biggest traumas millennials face? What do you think would be the shadows that they have?
People pleaser is one of the biggest one that I can actually think in from the top of my head.
Okay.
Because they're ruling from heart.
Sorry, I have a controversial take on that. When you say that the generation decided that it didn't want to work for somebody else, it had its own, the power to decide their own future, then you say they're people pleasers. Don't you think is a bit of a controversial statement to give?
It is not controversial because what you're looking at is how they are deciding to support themselves, and when I'm talking about people pleaser is how they want their relationship aspect to be.
Okay. Again, sorry, my bad. I got confused between the two.
It's fair because now you've been able to make distinctions. Previously, there was no distinctions. Everything came under just one umbrella. Now we have different spectrums that are opened up, So as people pleasers, they would want the relationship to be done, They know that maybe this is not right, but okay, let me take it. And now they're taking it with a decision that they have made, not because it is supposed to be. They are choosing that. So there is a difference between why people in previous generations could not do it, because they really didn't have the power and the authority to do it. Whereas against you have the power, but you're still choosing. So that is why you now become the people pleasers. We were not people pleasers. We either accepted it or we rebelled it.
Go ahead on.
It was that, it was a collision kind of a thing. But new people are now a little more subtle, more...
You can call it diplomatic, is the right way?
Maybe not, but whatever suits. You are millennial, you would know much about that better,
No, at the end of the day, you're an expert, so I just want to understand.
Yeah, but it could not be diplomat. It is about basically accepting the other person. See, this energy is about acceptance. I accept you the way you are, you know, and then you don't want to let go.
There's innocence in that.
It can be, but if it is going too much, then it becomes a shadow side, because then somebody has the power over you, and then you lose the control. Then that is a controversial statement, that when you have the power to do what you want to, you decided not to go in a corporate sector and become a consultant, and then you are facing the abuse by being in a relationship which is not allowing you to be yourself. Then it's a controversial statement, but up to the moment it is okay. So this is one of the things that is there, could be seen over there,
So now, what does their trauma teach us? Because every generation's trauma has some sort of learning curve for the other generation.
Yes.
Likewise, millennials also would have a certain trauma. So what trauma does that teach us, and what does it bring on the spectrum of spirituality?
Every shadow aspect of any generation automatically is the power of the another generation. Okay, so your shadow basically is to not accept reality as the way it is, because you are accepting the whatever it is shown, against which the generation after millennials, okay,
The Gen Zs.
okay,
Yeah.
the Gen Zs, they speak the truth, they know the truth, they will work on that. So that is an onset, a ladder that has been placed from your shadow. The ladder has been placed, and this is what they need to work on, and that's what they do.
It's a very interesting take.
Yeah.
So again, like you mentioned about Gen Zs, why don't we start from Gen now? Why don't we start for Gen Zs?
Yeah, Gen Zs are basically 1997, 98 to
Yeah.
2012 is Gen Zs, you
Yeah.
know, around millennials, okay?
Okay.
They were the ones actually who transcended from one millennium to the other, you know. So they are the Gen Zs, and yeah, they are very sparky people, and they accept the truth, they speak about the truth, they know the truth. And those who don't know the truth, you know, then their shadow part is, you know, that they cannot know, they are lost out. They are in confusion state, you know. So with this Gen Z is a lot of, you know, your throat chakra, you know, that has come into the power, you know, where it's all about expressing yourself, you know. So that is why you have a lot of, if you look at it, the influencers,
Yeah.
everybody is right around on the shadow is because about that, you know, because everybody wants to express.
Yeah.
You know, it could be in dance, it could be in music, it could be just art way, or some of them are really very crap way, but as long as they are expressing and they have views and audiences, they were doing well. So it's all about expression, you know. They are just able to do that, and of course a lot of things now are being cleared off, you know. On a spiritual level, a lot of truths are now coming out, you know. So what was previously accepted is no more accepted. So we had a Me Too moment around at that time, when women started speaking about a lot of issues that they faced during whatever work and time that they were doing, you know, because this is a time when the anchoring of those energies that gave the courage for you to express, and they had that boldness, you know, and they had that power, and the divine was holding that power for them. So all those movements that came out, and that broke the lot of toxic masculinity that was prevailing in the time, you know. So this, as now the generations are coming up, and I'm talking about the people who are actually working with their, you know, pains, with they're talking about their potentials and with their life purpose. They are the ones who are actually creating wonder worlds, you know. For example, in the previous generation, you have Greta Thunberg, you know. Now we don't know whether she is or for whatever way, but she voiced her opinion, and the way she started is, how dare you. She expressed it bang on the face of people, how dare you. Now that is an expression. We don't understand what is the agenda behind it, but I'm looking at just the question, you know, with the authority with which she said that this generation is not going to stop here. They're going to question, they're going to ask, they're going to find out the truths, and they're going to live that truth. So that is all Gen Z is about, you know.
So ma'am, like you spoke about the Me Too movements and all, and like we've been seeing, a lot of women have been, what do you call it, are voicing their opinions. They are showing their true self, they're showing their true strength. So I was actually, it was a very interesting take. I was going through a lecture of yours which you had done on divine masculine and divine feminine.
Yeah, right.
So do you think this is the time where divine feminine is basically overpowering the divine masculine?
The feminines essentially can never ever empower, you know, overpower, sorry. Divine feminines can never overpower. Against, when I say the divine masculine also does not overpower. The divine masculine and feminine always talks about balance. It's either the shadow masculine, okay, the shadow feminine, or the toxic masculine that are at the play. So quite possible. That is quite possible. We had so many women who were on a power position, and then they were corrupt, and then they did really nasty things against that, you know. These feminines, like we had Fulan Devi, you know, at one point of time she was abused so much, and then she had the power, she got corrupted, okay, but then she made the changes, and then she started helping. So she is a classic example of all the aspects of femininity.
I have a very different take on that, ma'am. When you look at the Gen Z, I sort of feel that they are the most patient characters you can come across. They don't mind waiting. See, like you said, they have the guts to go head on, but they don't mind waiting for the other person to also sort of turn around, the other person to also sort of come and say, look, I have made a mistake, I'm sorry. Like they will not shy away from a fight, but they don't intend to run into a fight.
Yeah, that is possible. What I'm trying to say is they are looking for truth. I'm not saying the ways with which they would be doing it. Yes, they could be patient. And patience is something which will be prominent amongst all the generations, and impatience could also be prominent among all the generations, you know. But in the essence, there are times, you know, for example, if I have to look at my generations, there were people who knew what is reality, but they really did not do anything about it. Patiently or impatiently, angrily or happily, it really doesn't matter, because that energies did not support. But now there are people that energies are supporting, so they are just looking for that, you know. They don't want illusions. Simply, it's all about clarity. That is what they're looking for.
So again, the same line of questions, pretty much the similar template that we've been going through.
Yeah.
Again, what do you think are the major shadows of Gen Zs?
So if they do not accept the truth, then they follow the false media, the false propaganda, the false people, you know. Again, I would reach out to all the people, you know, especially the parents, millennials, you know, and parents of Gen Z. Please make a choice to select, you know, a figure for your kids, because otherwise they are going to follow the fake people out there, and they would not know what is truth and what is reality, because the energies are very confusing at the moment.
But on that, again, I have a very different and a very controversial statement. The generation might be confused, I agree, but wouldn't the previous generation be the reason of their confusion? Because at the end of the day, that is again just a small kid who's just been born. He would be looking at the previous generations of the false propaganda, whatever's there on the Instagram. Of course, it's not the same age as a person elder to him, a generation elder to him. So isn't somewhat that is the old generation, the elder generation needs to understand, like the parents basically need to understand that what is right for the kid in terms of how they need to change their approach, or how they need to ensure that the right truth has been provided.
Again, yes, very true. It has to be done, you know. And if it is done, then this generation will know. So that is why the transparency factors, you know, that is very important. Most of the people, if you're looking at people around who are in their 20s and 30s right now, you know, between 20s and 30s, I think that is what the millennial age would be around.
Roughly, yes.
Roughly, you know, but maybe split between generational A and generational Z, there might be people. See, there are people who are coming from small town. The people have that small mindset, you know, of how people should be working and all of that, you know. And like I said, not everybody is actually evolving. So when I say evolvement happens, so it may be 2% when we start with the silent generation, which is our literally great grandfather's age, and only the rest 98% would be still, you know, with the fearful mindset. So with every generation, the impact is increasing, which means that at any given point of time, today also, if we are talking about generational alpha, at that point of time also there is 80% of the people who are still constantly living in shadows. So there are people who are trying to make it large, you know. People come from small towns, the girls, they come from small town because they have the courage, they have the power, they know that they have the you know, infrastructure to do what they want to in terms of their qualification, skills and all of that. When they come here, they are completely in contrast with the parents, you know, because then the parents are thinking this is not good and that is not good, you know, and for them, no, it's okay, it's perfectly fine. And if they share their truth with the parents, they are not going to accept it. It's going to create a problem. So this is how this problem is happening when the current generation, you know, are constantly in that state of confusion, is because though they want to share the truth, they know they cannot share the truth.
We are in a situation where one phone has 3 different locks. So when you talk about transparency, how do you ensure transparency? Because today, if I look at my phone, as a matter of fact, my phone has a Face ID. Then you go on WhatsApp, my WhatsApp has a Face ID. Then you open WhatsApp, then there are certain locked chats which nobody can access. So when we talk about transparency, we are not creating a base for transparency. We are creating base for hiding situations.
Now we are hiding against whom? That is first your question. I don't think this generation is hiding anything from their partners. If I have to look at Gen Alpha, they are the one who are creating, and Gen Millennials, actually Millennials also, you know, they are creating a common Insta IDs where both of them can post. They are sharing the passwords, Now, if I have to, the question is very important, but the answer is going to be very different, Now, what happens as the earth is evolving, there is lightness that is spreading. The darkness doesn't want to lose that power. The darkness intent essentially is that all this powerful energy should not be anchored. The human should not grow. The human should not ascend. And they want you to be still stuck in that 80% of the shadow work, where they are trying to have control over you. So these are the infiltrations done from their side. So that if you have an option, you're going to do that. Our generation didn't have that option. I mean, I remember when I was young, we had one phone. And anybody could take the phone and anybody could talk to anybody. Today it's a very different scenario. So with these are the false propagandas or false what I would say infiltrations. The true infiltrations are happening so that you stay in control, where you are always conflicted, where you are always staying in lower vibrations. And that is how you need to understand that if you need to be transparent with your partner, you need to be transparent with your whoever you are staying with. Like I know, for example, if I am calling you, you're going to answer to me.
Yeah, for
irrespective of whatever time you're going to call, you're going to answer me. That is the level of transparency. That is the level of things. If I just need to know where is your location. If I know where your location is, I'm satisfied. That is the transparency that is done. What you are doing, how you are doing is not the concern. All I'm looking for is safety. So I need not know about your details, but I need to know what things are happening. Similarly, if you choose to be transparent, you don't have to show everything, but it's just the very fact, that your phone is not locked. If your partner's phone is not locked, if your partner's phone is not hiding all the time, if anything is coming, everything locks are not there. I mean, these are the things that are creating suspicions. And those suspicions then, of course, lead to worse results in life, But if you are not doing that, so again, I say, I'm talking about the people who are choosing to evolve, and we are only talking about that green 5 to 6% people, because rest of the people are in shadow, and that is going to always put humanity under shackles.
So when we talk about, like you said, like around 5 to 6% have only they come towards the
on the
light side.
Yes.
Rest are still in the shadow space. How do you ensure that you don't go back into the shadow, or how do you evolve yourself out of the shadow?
See, any sort of growth essentially is upwards. You may fall down, but you have tasted something which is up there. So you always want to go back. So the growth is always up towards upward movement. Okay. Now what happens is, if I have to look at your example, a different take on it, which just came to me. A person may be in a shadow in his time, but will come to reality because of the work done by the younger generation. Even by that 5% or 2%, because they have anchored that energies, these people are aware, these people have experiences, they have understood it. So their 2% worth is actually reflecting on the past generation.
No, so my basic question was, how do you get out of the shadow side?
That is how you get out. But you don't get out immediately.
Yeah, but how do you start? Now you say, for example, there might be certain things that you may do. So you say meditation, or there could be.
Oh, you mean to say in those terms?
In normal sense, like if an audience, if somebody is in a shadow state right now, the person might not know. But
for example, this current generation, if we are talking about it, their shadow self is being, following false leaders. Okay, so that is why you have so many people who are influencers. You have so many people who are literally advertising. They may not eat it, but they are advertising it. So you have to be smart enough to see through the truth. This generation's thing is that they have the power to see through the truth only if you're willing to. Of course, then you have things like going back to yourself. You do meditation, you do yoga, you do pranayam, you do a lot of journal writing. You meet with high-level people, those who have energy vibrations. You need to talk to people who have this kind of concepts, who are explaining to them. But retaining it, working on it, and creating a discipline is very important. That is very important.
It's a self-journey.
Yes.
So now that we've spoken about all of these things regarding millennial or Generation Z, now again they will also have their set of traumas. So what does their trauma teaches us, like teaches the universe and teaches everything in spectrum to the spirituality?
With each chakra energy being anchored, like if you're looking at generational alpha, they are the diamond frequency.
No, I'm sorry to cut you in between, ma'am. We forgot to discuss which chakra is related to Generation Z.
Generation Z is throat chakra.
Okay.
We going to, it is to speak the truth, to see your truth, to understand your truth, and to work towards your truth, to accept yourself the way you are. That is about Generation Z. So 16-year-old Greta Thunberg, she just asked, how dare you? I mean, such an impactful thing. She was speaking her truth and she was unapologetic about it. So that is the power that this Gen Z has actually, so it's beautiful. And with that power and with that courage, I'm sure Gen Alpha will do wonders, because
For sure.
yeah.
So again, cycling, coming back to the point, again about the traumas. What traumas do you think Gen Zs have?
The ability to not look at things correctly. Okay, that is the biggest shadow. And
Misguided.
the traumas, misguided. That is why you see the youth totally completely misguided. You need to select their heroes, because if you don't select the heroes, especially to all the parents, I need to say, if you don't select the heroes for your kids, they are going to follow all the false lights, and that is what the darkness wants. They are constantly being in the part of manipulation, so you do not know what is truth, what is reality, what is real, what is fake, and it's in a confusion state. It's like fog. Again, like we have Lord Rahu, its impact is really important on so we need to have clarity.
Okay.
That is what is important for this generation.
So now that we've discussed about the Generation Z, Generation Z.
Yeah.
So which is the generation after that? Like you said, I think it was Generation Alpha.
Yeah, Generation Alpha, or they call themselves Gen A.
Okay.
Yeah. They
have a lot of
oh my God,
some iteration of words which we don't understand.
So when I have clients who are Gen A, I literally have to ask them for all the things like pocketing and benching and pubbing, or I'm at a complete loss. They are the creators, because they are on that evolved state. It is all about the sixth chakra. They are anchoring the energies of the sixth chakra, where it's all about duality. So the confusion part is that they will be away from the confusion. They can see the world. They are the ones who are like completely in their own zone. Like whatever shit happens, it really doesn't matter. They are in their happy zone. They are in their own self, and they are doing everything soul based. Everything is soul based, so they may want to work, they may not want to work, and they are blessed with people who are going to work for them. So they really don't have to do, they don't believe in that much of hard work, in sense that they really don't need to do that hard work. So they have 6 generations ahead of us who did the work for them. So they need not do it. They have processed so much of things that they have the liberty to choose to do what they want to, or may not do anything at all, So that is Gen A for you. They are completely in their power. They know who they have acceptance, and for them healing is the most important part, because they are the ones who are actually going to fight the darkness. The coming generation are going to fight the darkness, but there is a lot of things that are being at play, because so that they are constantly evolved, constantly in that rat race, or constantly in that issues of lower vibrations. That is really causing problems, because this is the actual war that started. All of us contributed to it, but it's the Generation Alpha who's going to do the work for us.
So I think we should have a second podcast just to discuss the issues or the relationships about the Gen A. What do you think on that?
Yeah, we can do that. Because yes, it's very important, is because these are the people who are going to be fighting the entire war between light and darkness. And there is a constant manipulation happening, constant programming happening, so that they are just occupied within their selves, so that they don't rise into the period. So yes, we can do that, definitely.
Fair. So guys, stay tuned for a second podcast, which we will be coming out very soon, regarding the issues of the Generation Alpha, or Gen A's as ma'am calls it. And thank you so much, ma'am, for sparing time, coming on our podcast, giving us the invaluable knowledge that you have.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, it was a good topic, and this was very important. And I hope people just love this information, and they know how much they have anchored their energies just by being on earth. So thank you, each and every one of you. Thank you so much.
And guys, thank you for watching. For all our viewers who streamed with us till now, do like, share and subscribe. We will be back soon.